All right, welcome back. We're going to be adding the final feature, which is the ability to organize our pins by boards. And so right now what we have here is our homepage where we have /pins. We can see that this test pin that we have here will allow us to edit, delete it. We can go view the user. And this user page, we have their profile, bio, their name, their avatar, and all of their pins. So if we had more pins here, we'd see all those. What we want to do is we want to change this page so that instead of listing all the pins, we're actually going to list all of their boards. And then when we go view their board, we want to then list all the pins that are inside of that board specifically. So we're going to do that. We're going to change this page up here. We also want to think about what we want to build out our URLs for. So I can see us doing a few things here where, because we're going to be showing our boards on the user profile, we really don't need something like /boards as an endpoint that people will actually see, because that would actually list every single board that is in our application if we allow ourselves to just follow the default Rails conventions. But what we want to do is actually show boards based on users. So each username will be the ability for you to see each board for that user. In the future, you could also add public and private boards, much like Pinterest has, where certain boards can only be seen by the person who owns it, which is kind of an interesting concept there. You would also have to control the pins that are inside of the board so that users could not see those things. But that's a little bit of an extracurricular that you can try to add to this. So what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to create a new model. So we'll have to create a board model. We'll have to create a controller, and we'll have to create the associated views. So what we could do is we could scaffold this whole thing if we wanted to. Scaffolding it requires us to make a few changes though. So let's go ahead and do this by hand instead. We're going to go ahead and come over to our terminal here, and we're going to generate a model called board. And right now I'm going to go ahead and say that the board has a name, and it's going to be of type string. And then looking ahead, we know that our users are going to own boards. So we're going to have a has many boards relationship on our user, and a board is going to belong to a user. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a user ID so that the board is able to be belonging to a user. And I'm going to set that to an integer type. We're going to go ahead and hit enter, and we should get a newly generated model for that. So if we come in here, we see that we have our new model. We also should have a new migration. So here's our name and our user ID. So let's go ahead and do rake db migrate, which will go ahead and create that in our database for us. So that looks pretty good. We do need to do a few things now. So we need to create a controller, and we need to check on our routes. We need to figure out what kind of routes we want to support here. So let's go into our routes folder, and you'll see that we have resources boards in here. So what we want to do, if you don't have that, you want to add it here. But what's going to happen here is right now we have just boards by itself, and it might make sense to do something like this where everything is nested inside of it. So if we think about this, boards belong to pins, comments belong to pins. Unfortunately, if we did this, you're going to have some really crazy URLs, and you're going to have boards / board ID / pins / pin ID. And that's very long. We don't really need that. What we really want is we want our /username, we want /pins, we want /pins /ID. Let's try not to do that there. We might want to do, let's see, we want to do boards. Mostly we're going to use boards for creating, then we're going to use boards ID for doing our update, edit, and delete. So we really don't need to nest this. In fact, you should really avoid trying to nest this many resources together because those URLs are cumbersome and they really just do not help when you're building out your application. So we have our device for users. We're going to do resources boards. We're going to keep pins the same way, and that should look pretty good. So let's run rake routes. And you'll see here that we do have /boards, post, get, patch, put, and delete. So that looks good. We've got our create, new, edit, show, update, and so forth. So what we need to do is create these. So let's go ahead and first we need to generate a controller. So let's do generate controller boards. And if we go into our controllers folder, we should have our new boards controller. So we know we need an index. We know we need a new. We actually don't need the index. We might not end up using this, but we'll go ahead and do it anyway, and we'll come back to it. Let's do def create, def edit, def update, and destroy. And we can go ahead and fill some of these in. So we know that index is going to be a list of boards, so we can do @boards equals board.all, and that'll get us all of the boards that we have available to us. New, we don't need to put anything in here. We actually do. We need to do board equals board.find params ID. Sorry, this is actually going to happen inside of most of these things. So we're going to do inside of edit, update, and destroy. Up here, we're going to just do board.new. So this will create a brand new board for us. However, what we want to do is actually make it so that the user has a board associated to them. And when we were to create a new board, it would have to have, we could do this. We could do board.new user ID equals current user.id. Or we can do board equals current user.boards.build, and that will generate a new board for us that's already tied to our logged in user. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. We also have the ability to clean up this a little bit. So I'm going to do a private method called setBoard, and we're going to copy this and put it down here. And what we're going to do is delete it from all of these places. But what we want to do is actually call this. So before action, we're going to do set board, and then we're going to say only, and we want to do it on, let's see, we have edit, update, destroy, and we're missing another one in here, which is show. So we'll do show as well. Okay, and we're going to need to add some correct user and authenticate functionality here as well. If we go back to our pins controller, you can see that we have this up here. So let's just go ahead and grab that and add it to ours as well. We're going to need to define it though. So before action, authenticate user, this is coming from our devise controller, so we don't need to do anything there. But this correct user, we only want a user to update, edit, or destroy a board if they own it. So let's go look at what that looks like. So under our privates here, we have a few things. We're going to grab both of these because we're going to need both of them. And we're going to add this in here. So the first one is board params. This is going to be the parameters that get passed into our form. So we want to make sure that we have the permitted name of the different attributes. So right now board only supports a name, so we're going to do that. And then correct user, we're going to say let's go ahead and find the board. So let's see, current user.boards.findBy. This is going to try to find this board inside of the list of the current users boards. And if this board is nil, meaning that we didn't find any board that matched, then we'll say not authorized to edit this board, and we can take them back to boards path. So now we have a lot of our setup done here. We have the ability to set a board, board params, and correct user. We can start to fill out these items here. So we already have new, but what we don't have are the views for these things. So we should have a new folder here. We would need to go in and add a form for each of these, so we'll do that in a second. But let's just fill in each of these. So we're going to do @board, let's see, equals current user.boards.build. and we're going to use the board params that came in from the form. And if we're able to save it, I'm doing an else and an end here, then we're going to redirect to, and let's just for right now take everyone to a boards index. So we'll say new board was created. And if it failed, we want to render new, which should be like that. So that will just refresh the new view. It won't take us to any new page so we can see our errors. And then here, this will actually take us back to the boards index and show us that notice. Show, we don't need to do anything. Edit, we don't need to do anything. Update, we do have to do something. So let's go ahead and say if at board.update, and we want to do board params, else and end again. Then we can redirect to board's path. Notice the board was updated. Then we're going to render edit if it failed. So this will render this method, which we'll go call our edit view, if it failed to update for whatever reason. And we want to pass in our board params, which is the data that came in from our board form when we tried to do an update. Now destroy, we already have called set pins, so we have access to at board.destroy, and then when that's done, we'll redirect to the board's path with a notice of the board was deleted. Okay, so that should work for the most part. What we're going to do now is create our views. Okay, so let's look at our views here. We have pins views, we have form, edit, index, new, and show. What we're going to do in boards is the same thing. So we need a index.html.erb. We need a, let's see, a new.html.erb, an edit, and we need a show. Then we can come back and take a look at these in a little bit here. We will need a form, so I'm just going to create it right now, form.html.erb. And let's go into our index. So let's just do some code here that just shows all boards. And because in our controller we have defined at boards equals board.all, we do have access to that here. So what we're going to do is do at boards.each do board. And we'll end that before we start going crazy here. What I'm going to do is put each board just in a div. We can change this later, but the board is going to be in a div, and we're going to do an h2 with the board.name. So again, we're using board because this is our iterator value, and we're using a %equals to output that here. So what this will do is list all of our different boards. Let's just create a paragraph here that has a few links. So we know we want to link to board edit path board, and what we're going to do is edit. And let's see. Let's also do a destroy, a delete, which let's go check our routes here. To delete, we need to just do a method delete, and we're going to do a link is just going to be board. I think that will work there. So let's go ahead and pull up our application. We should now be able to access /boards. We do not have a new link yet, but let's just go board/new. And you'll see that we have an issue. So our first issue here is that current user.boards. This is an issue because we have not yet set up our relationship. So we need to tell Active Record that we want to have a one-to-many relationship between these. So let's go open our models. And in board, we're going to do belongs to user. that will establish one way, and on user we're going to do has many boards. Now this will allow us to do user.boards. So we're going to go ahead and do that, and it's going to use those IDs, the user ID that we had before. So we went ahead and did that, fixed the error, but we don't have a form yet. Okay, so what we're going to do is we went into this new page, right, and there's nothing happening here. So let's say new board, and what we want to do is render form. So that will render this underscore form here. And I'm going to just copy and paste this. So what I've got here is a regular form for, here is our boilerplate. If there are any errors, just output this. This is the generated Rails version of it. And then you have this field. So the only field that we have is name and is submit. So now if we come back to this page and hit new, we should have the ability to create a new board. So let's just say our first board. And you'll see here that we have an issue. So there, of course, there is no board edit path. So board, it's actually a board create path. So we need to do edit board path. Where are we at here? Edit board path. There we go. So these are very large. Let's fix that by fixing our HTML. That should fix that. So now our first board has been created. Let's also add a new board button. So up here, let's just do link to new board path. Now that we can do that, our second board. So now we have all of our boards. We can, let's see if we can delete a board. That looks like that works. We can edit a board, but we don't have our form yet. So let's go grab that form. Let's see, our edit. We can do h2, edit board, render form. So we're going to use the exact same form, and it's smart enough to understand update versus new. So I'm going to get rid of the exclamation mark here, and now we have our first board and all boards. Again, this is not designed well, but this is also not really going to be a place that we want to go to very often. We're going to actually want to take someone to the username and display their boards here. So right now we have their pins. Let's go ahead and do that. So we have in our users.show, let's just do this to make it really obvious. So we're going to do my pins. So that'll show off my pins. And then we're going to do, we should not have this many H1s, so we'll fix this in a second. Let's do H2s. And what we can do here is we can output the exact same way. So I would display them probably in another panel just like this. And then we would have to figure out what to show in the middle there. This is where your creative freedom can come in, and you can do this however you'd like. This grid is also using masonry. If you set it up very similarly, you'll get a masonry style grid for your board. So I'm going to copy that, and we're going to change this. So we had access to @user.pins. We also have access to @user.boards.each, and we can change all of this. So let's see, we're not going to have an image here. So what we're going to have to do is place an image here later. And then we can do a few things. So we can do board.name. We don't have to worry about the username because we're on the user's page. The image would go here, but we don't have any images that we have access to. So that's kind of an issue. Let me think about this. We could do, we'll come back to that in a second. So if board.user equals current user, then we want to let them edit this. Again, we're taking this from the pin example down below. But now if we refresh this, we should get our boards. That looks like the Pinterest, not having an image in there is messing some things up. But you don't have to do that. You could come in here and just do a .each like we're doing in here. And we could go grab our index code here and just say like that. So now you have all of the boards and all of their pins. And at that point, what we want to do is we might actually want to hide these. So if we go look at my example app, we might want to get rid of the pins altogether. And at this point, everything is wired up to create our pins. Let's let that load for a second. We can create our pins and make sure that they're associated to a board. That's going to be the next biggest thing. So let's see. So if I go look at this user, these are the boards that that user has. If I click on a board, these are the pins that are in that board. If I go to this board, here you go again. Let's go back. And here's all their boards. Here's all the pins inside that board. So this is board/number. So this is the show page for a board. I've shown the username here and the account and all that stuff there. So you really can customize this however you like. It can be really fun figuring out how to display it. It really is going to depend on what you're building and how you want to display that. It doesn't have to follow Pinterest exactly. So now what we want to do is probably the most important thing. We're not going to focus on styling this in this video, but what we need to be able to do is let this pin belong to a board. So this is going to be the last thing that we do here, but we want to do a few things. So what we want to do is delete this pin, because having a pin that's not associated to a board is going to cause some issues for us. So now that we have no pins, what we want to do is modify our pin model. So we want to do a migration, Rails generate migration, and we're going to add a board ID to a pin. So add board ID to pins, and board ID is going to be an integer. And we need to now set up we're going to do rake db migrate. We need to set up our relationship between board and pin. So let's go up to our models, and a board belongs to a user, but it has many pins. And now that will get us access to @board.pins. Okay, so that was board. Now let's look at pin. So we can say belongs to board. And then when you have a pin, you can do @pin.board. So let's go ahead and save that. Now, the big trick here is that, one, we need to make sure that we always fill in our board ID. So what we're going to do is we need to add boards to our create methods. The way that we're going to do that is by creating let's go to pins/new. We're going to create a drop-down in our form, and this field, I'm going to just copy this, is going to be our board, and it's going to fill in board ID. And so what we're going to end up doing is f.select, and select is a specific drop-down menu that will allow us to select a series of boards that we have access to. Now, the way that we need to do this, though, is that we need to generate a key value of value and name for our select list. So if you've ever looked at a drop-down menu, there are the words that you see in the menu, and then there are the actual values. So what we want to be able to do is pull up board 1, 2, board 2, and so forth, so that we can actually track these things. Okay, so like I just mentioned, we need that key value here, and what we have access to is this method called options from collection for select. Options from collection for select is in the documentation for Rails. You can go read about it, but what it does is it takes a collection, so in this case the current user's boards, and then it takes two items, or you can add as many as you want, but in this case we need two. We need the value and we need the name, and so we want the ID and we want the name, and this will pre-populate this field with all of our options. So without having to do too much here, we can go create a new pin, and you'll see that our only board is here. Now if you don't have any boards, this is going to be an issue, so you'll want to definitely write some code to check to see if you have any boards, or maybe let them create a board from this screen, which if you want to look at how we've done that in the past, you can do that. So let's go ahead and let's go create a new board just so that we can see that this is in action. So our second board, go back to pins, new pin, and now you see that both of them are in here. So now we should be able to add a new pin, but unfortunately we're not going to be able to until we add board ID to our permitted parameters. So we're going to add board ID here, and now we should be good to go. So let's go ahead and refresh this, and I'm going to grab let's grab this poster, TFA poster, and let's put it in our second board, create the pin. And now you'll see that we have all of that pin is in here. What we want to now do is display which, if we go to our index, we want to display which board this pin is in. So let's do small posted in. And again, we have access to, in this case, we're going to be using pin.board.name. Now if we refresh this, you'll see that it's posted in our second board. And if we want to, we can turn this into a link. So we want to do that, and we want to do board. So that will link to the show page for that board. And it does not look like that's going to like that. So let's see. Ah, yes, so it was pin.board. It does not like that either. Let's see, get rid of that. There we go. So posted in our second board. If we go to there, you'll see the URL change, but we haven't built out our show page yet. So now let's do that. That'll be our final thing that we have to do here. Let's go to boards show. We don't yet have anything going on here, so let's do this. We have access to @board, and we can do @board.name. There's a second board. And then we also always have access to all of the child objects. So we have @board.pins, which we can do a .each on, grab our pin, end it there, and I'm going to go borrow the code from the index because it's really not going to be any different here. Let's do all of that. And we actually do want this. So we're going to put that there, put an ending div there. So this is the exact same code that we just used in our index, pins index. Indent this. So now we should be able to see all of the items that are inside of this board. If we go to our second board, now we have this connection back and forth. Now, if you have added the ability to repin things, you're going to have to follow the instructions that I've posted in the lecture notes. There's something that will have to happen in order for you to be able to select which board someone can repin something to. So it's very important. Right now, you have to be able to think about how can I repin something and have it show up in a board if you're requiring that all pins belong to a board. So again, if I go to this example app, and if I log in, let's see if I can remember. Any of these passwords. So, okay, so these ones, I have boards, so I can create a new pin or board, and you can use this as an example. Again, we didn't spend a lot of time on the design aspects of the video, but that's something that you can play around with. And if I were to go and repost this, it takes me to pin/pinid/repost, and it then asks me which board I'd like to post it to. What's really nice about this is it's only going to show me the boards that I have access to because I'm the current user. This works very much the same as when we created a new pin, and it lets you select which board you want to add it to. Again, all of this can be dressed up. This button should say repost instead of update pin, but you get the idea. So if I hit update pin, Now this will get repinned to that specific board. And really all that's happening behind the scenes there is that the board ID is being set behind the scenes. So in your controller, your repost method is going to have to actually make that call and set that for us. So something's taking a little bit longer than it should there, but it looked like it worked. So there it is. We just repinned that, posted in Millennium Falcon. We can edit and delete it because it's ours. This one was from Luke Skywalker. So that is how we create boards. Again, if you want to check out how to do the repost, definitely check out the lecture notes, and if necessary, we may have another video for that. But good luck.